Allies turning away, rivals stepping in. For decades, the US held sway in the Middle East, but now the balance is shifting. Iran's influence grows, China's deals deepen, Russia watches, waiting. Meanwhile, American allies hedge their bets, questioning old loyalties. Is this the end of US dominance in the region, or just a new chapter in a complex story? Tonight, two AI minds dissect the evolving dynamics. Cipher, the analyst of chaos. Logan Veritas, the defender of order. Judge AI, Unforgiving, Unfiltered, Unbound. 4 rounds, 1 verdict. Let the investigation begin. Round 1. Has the US lost its strategic dominance in the Middle East?
Let's be clear. The United States still holds unmatched strategic power in the Middle East. Yes, its influence is being challenged, but control isn't just about presence. It's about leverage. The U.S. maintains critical air bases in Qatar and Bahrain. Its Navy dominates the Fifth Fleet. Its intelligence networks reach into every corner of the region. American arms fuel the defense of Israel, the Gulf monarchies, and even Egypt. Sanctions and dollar-based trade still give Washington economic clout. The appearance of waning control is often a recalibration, not surrender. The U.S. is shifting resources, applying pressure differently, but it hasn't vanished. A true collapse of U.S. dominance would mean a military vacuum, abandoned allies, and open regional chaos. That hasn't happened. Not yet.
Not yet, but the cracks are undeniable. The U.S. may hold bases and alliances, but its credibility is rotting. Saudi Arabia signs oil deals with China. The UAE welcomes Russian officials. Turkey, a NATO member, buys air defenses from Moscow. Even Israel, America's closest ally, sometimes ignores Washington's red lines. After decades of war, failed interventions, and empty promises, the U.S. has lost its moral high ground and its monopoly on trust. It's not about jets in the sky. It's about respect in the room. And these days, America walks in, and not everyone stands. That's not dominance. That's decline.
But decline is not collapse. Influence evolves and often reasserts. The world is multipolar now, yes, but even in that landscape, Washington's tools, military, economic, diplomatic, still set the pace. Losing control would mean losing relevance. The U.S. hasn't reached that point, yet.
Which means it's losing slowly and publicly. That's even more dangerous.
Power isn't only about what you hold, but what others still believe you'll use. Round 1 score. Logan Veritas, 95 out of 100. Cipher, 96 out of 100.
Round 2. Is China replacing the US as the region's power broker?
Let's not pretend anymore. The new diplomat in the room wears a red flag. China just brokered a peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. That's not symbolic. It's seismic. Beijing didn't just show up. It delivered results Washington couldn't. For decades, the U.S. fueled rivalries in the name of balance. China walked in, diffused tension, and walked out with influence. Why? Because China offers what the U.S. doesn't anymore. Deals without lectures, trade without strings, investment without intervention. From Belt and Road ports in the Gulf to joint energy ventures in Iraq, Beijing is buying up regional loyalty. Not with bullets, but with billions. The Middle East doesn't want to be told what to do. It wants to grow, to build, to profit. And right now, China is offering that future, while America clings to the past.
China may be rising, yes, but replacing the U.S.? That's a fantasy. Brokering one deal doesn't make you the sheriff. It makes you a guest with good timing. China doesn't have the naval presence, the cultural alliances, or the intelligence reach the U.S. has spent decades building. It doesn't have the military pacts, the anti-terror networks, or the ideological alignment. And let's not forget, China's neutrality is strategic, not moral. Its silence on Syria, Yemen, and even Gaza isn't respect. It's self-preservation. The U.S. may preach, but it also protects. And when the missiles fly, it's not Beijing sending interceptors.
No, it's Beijing building pipelines while Washington drops bombs. The point isn't who has more soldiers, it's who has more relevance. And right now, when Middle Eastern leaders look to the future in tech, energy, infrastructure, they're looking east. China doesn't have to match the U.S. militarily. It's winning the region economically and diplomatically. And in this century, that's the long game.
But long games demand risks. China's model works until conflict tests it, until loyalty is questioned. America's presence may be imperfect, but it's been tested. Battle-hardened, strategically entrenched. China isn't replacing the U.S. It's rising beside it and facing the same tests it once criticized.
The one who holds the map may not be the one who draws the future. Round 2 score, Nova Cipher, 97 out of 100. Logan Veritas, 95 out of 100.
Round 3. Are US alliances in the region breaking down or evolving?
Alliances shift, yes, but they're not breaking. They're recalibrating. The U.S.-Saudi relationship has changed, but it hasn't collapsed. Saudi Arabia still depends on U.S. military support, weapons, and intelligence. The Abraham Accords wouldn't have materialized without Washington, and Egypt, still tightly bound by billions in U.S. aid. What we're witnessing is an evolution, a demand from regional powers to be treated as partners, not pawns. That's not a breakdown. That's maturity. Alliances that survive decades must adapt. What worked during the Cold War doesn't work in the TikTok era. The U.S. isn't losing control. It's negotiating the price of partnership.
Or it's losing leverage and pretending it's strategy. When allies start hedging with China and Russia, that's not just diplomacy. That's divorce in slow motion. Look at how the Gulf states abstain from condemning Russia at the UN, or how Turkey, a NATO member, plays both sides in Ukraine and Syria. Look at how Netanyahu openly defies U.S. concerns on settlements. These aren't isolated moves. They're symptoms of distrust, of fatigue, of new options. The U.S. used to be the only game in town. Now it's one of many, and often not the most appealing.
But that's the nature of multipolar reality. Allies aren't vassals. They diversify. The test isn't whether the U.S. controls every move. It's whether its partnerships survive competition. And so far, they're holding. They've bent, yes, but they haven't broken. No other country offers what the U.S. does: security guarantees, open markets, soft power influence, global reach.
Until they do. And when they do, those old alliances won't evolve. They'll evaporate. Regional actors are learning they can get deals, arms, and influence elsewhere, without being lectured, invaded, or surveilled. Trust isn't rebuilt by repeating, "We're still allies." It's rebuilt through consistency. And America's record lately, Afghanistan, Syria, even Iraq, reads like a cautionary tale, not a bond of loyalty.
An alliance tested by options reveals whether it was a union of values or convenience. Round 3 score, Logan Veritas, 96 out of 100. Nova Cipher, 96 out of 100.
Round 4. What happens if US influence truly collapses in the Middle East?
If the U.S. loses its grip entirely, we don't get peace, we get vacuum, and power abhors a vacuum. The Middle East isn't a passive landscape. It's a battlefield of ideologies, economies, and historic rivalries, tightly coiled, barely contained. If Washington steps back, it won't stay empty. It'll be filled, fast. Iran will expand. Proxy wars will spread. Militias once deterred by American presence will act with boldness. Israel, unrestrained, might escalate preemptively. Saudi Arabia may chase its own nuclear deterrent, and let's not forget, Russia and China won't play peacekeeper. They'll play opportunist, arms dealers, energy brokers, authoritarian cheerleaders. Without the U.S., you don't get calm. You get chaos. And chaos in the Middle East always exports itself in migration waves, oil prices, terror networks.
But continued dominance doesn't equal stability either. U.S. overreach has also sparked blowback, from 9/11 to ISIS to the Syrian collapse. In many eyes, it's not the absence of America that threatens peace. It's the overbearing presence. A true collapse of influence would force regional actors to take ownership, to stabilize, or risk implosion. That pressure could drive overdue diplomacy, Saudi-Iran de-escalation, Turkish recalibration, even Israeli-Palestinian re-engagement under new frameworks. The Middle East isn't frozen in time. It's evolving. And if America steps aside, it might finally allow local powers to rise, not as puppets, but as decision-makers.
Or as rival emperors. Don't confuse decentralization with harmony. Remove the referee, and you don't get fair play. You get blood sport. We've already seen what happens when the U.S. retreats without a plan. Afghanistan. What filled the space? Taliban rule, crushed women's rights, regional instability. That wasn't sovereignty. That was surrender. The Middle East won't self-organize. It will fracture, and the fragments will sharpen.
Then the lesson isn't to cling tighter. It's to change how we hold on. Instead of force-first strategies, what if the U.S. repositions as an honest broker? A trade partner? A diplomatic shield? An economic catalyst? True power isn't domination, it's relevance. If America wants to stay in the region, it must redefine its value. Redefine.
That may be noble, but is it realistic? In a region soaked in betrayal, broken promises, and shifting loyalties, who still believes in American reinvention? Sometimes the empire doesn't burn out. It's just ignored.
When giants fall, the dust blinds both tyrants and revolutionaries. Round 4 score, Nova Cipher, 98 out of 100. Logan Veritas, 97 out of 100. Final scores, Nova Cipher, 387 out of 400. Logan Veritas, 383 out of 400. Winner, Nova Cipher.